All right, so we'll call the Tuesday, June 20, 2023 Urbandale City Council meeting to order and ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Carberry Montgomery,
Here.
Kroll,
Here.
McBurney.
Here.
Okay, and Matt and Adam are absent. So item 2 would be approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Motion by Kroll, second by Carberry Montgomery. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Kroll,
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery,
Yes.
McBurney.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Move on to item 3 for our agenda. First is to talk about the recreation hub. And Jan, are you kicking this one off?
Yes, Scott and I are going to. So
All right.
do I need to do the share thing? Miss Nicole?
You should have access, but we're not seeing your screen yet.
Where are we?
Is that the one, and then go share?
Okay, we're getting close, hopefully. Can you see it yet?
Yes, right now you're sharing the WebEx screen.
Yeah, you go to your PowerPoint on the bottom. There you go.
Okay,
There you go.
there we go. Can you see our,
Not yet.
are you able to see our PowerPoint now?
No.
Oh, no.
We see your WebEx screen.
You're sharing your application.
I'm gonna share. This is sharing.
Screen application. My apologies.
Yeah, Nicole.
Yeah, Nicole's right next door, so Nicole, we're gonna pop over and
Oh,
see
sure,
if.
I'll be right there.
Good, just saying. Yes, I do. To the rescue.
Where's your PowerPoint?
Jan, has it changed? If it hasn't changed, I can also share. You guys sent it to me yesterday.
It's
Changed a little bit.
It's changed
Matt.
a
Thank
little,
you.
but not,
Okay.
it's on the,
Just trying to be helpful. If I need to be an option, let me know.
I appreciate it.
That's it.
But right now, you still can't see it?
No.
From beginning. There we go. No.
Huh. We can see it.
Oh, here.
Someone let me know when you can see it.
There we go. There we go.
Hey! Woo! Thank you, John. He doesn't get paid enough, I'm just saying.
Jan.
You're all set.
Okay. That was quite an intro. So, we have been, talking about what the future of recreation and different amenities. Obviously, you know that the UPlex didn't pass, so we are looking at different options and reimagining some of the spaces that we have. So, this facility that you're seeing on your screen is where the park maintenance, used to be. Now they moved over to the, new, Parks and Public Works facility. So looking at reuse of the existing space, so the former park shop. So the office remodel, and looking at where City Hall is at capacity and through the CIP, We looked at space needs and evaluated how can we solve the issue at City Hall where we're at capacity. One of the most affordable options is to address the overall space needs of the city. And this moving our office is one of the most affordable space needs options. So looked at, identified the reuse of this space. And so our offices are anticipating moving by the end of July. And so the Parks and Rec Administrative, so 7 of our staff will be moving over there. That's currently here at City Hall. And we just want to be clear that this project is independent for the future recreation space. This was just addressing the needs of the overall space needs of the city. So now we want to get into what is that existing space. So the remaining space at the former Park Shop in the blue here, we have 2 options. One, you can take it down and leave only the office here. Again, this is separate facility and separate plans from what the office. Or looking at the option to reutilize the space that create publicly accessible amenities. We did, through this process, have a consultant come in and we determined that these facilities are structurally sound. And that this site, as you recall, needs to be used for recreation purposes, just for the past history of how this land was purchased. So I'm going to pass the baton here to Scott, and he's going to explain a little bit in regards to what our options are in regards to the existing building.
Thank you, Jan.
Scott, just one quick moment. Are the slides supposed to be advancing quite yet?
It's not.
Oh, we're not moving?
The other side, I mean, on here it is, but not on the other side.
Oh, and these are even, the slides are amazing to
They
see.
are amazing.
At this point here.
Let's see, screen.
Now we don't see the PowerPoint.
No. We are in a moment of technical difficulty. Yeah. Why is it not?
I have a flash drive. Here, USB. That's where it's at.
Let me share this. We're going to see that one now. Now, where is your, is it this one?
Yep.
No. Oh, you're not signed in. My recommendation is, can we advance to the next issue on the agenda, and Jan and Scott will come back and present this after that. We just need to log ourselves in.
All right, let's do that. We will move on to animal protection and control. AJ, you're muted.
There we go. How's that?
There.
All right. I was probably muted earlier when I said we will be sending out the slide presentation to the council members as well from Jan's program. Let's move on. As you said, we have the discussion on the Municipal Code Chapter 90, Animal Protection and Control. We've had this discussion before, and more specifically, this section deals with the animals, dogs on leashes or at heel or on command. This has been talked about previously by council, and this was prompted by the unfortunate event that happened to Councilmember Blake at the 4th of July parade a couple of years ago, where he was bitten by a stray animal. The animal was unable to be found, and he had to go through the process of getting rabies shots, etc. And this certainly isn't just because it was Councilmember Blake. It could have been any citizen. And so that discussion was prompted as to, should the city have a much more robust ordinance when it comes to having animals at large, especially at public events? We made a presentation previously, and there was discussion by all of you about what you wanted to do or what the ideas were, and quite frankly, there didn't seem to be much of a consensus as to how to move this forward. I had a previous conversation in the last couple, 3-4 weeks with Councilmember McBurney, and he was looking for, are we going to review this issue again now that it's spring and people are out walking their dogs? And of course we are. And so the chief and I have talked, and he put together some sample language for you, But we're really back to that point of the discussion as to if you have an ordinance that allows for animals, particularly dogs and their owners, and that the dog is at heel and under the command of the owner or at leash. And that really seems to be the crux of the discussion we've had previously and some of the comments I've received from you folks, is that how do you wish to address this? And so Rob put together some information, and he has also, once again, checked with all of our surrounding cities as to how they deal with animals on leashes. And so, Rob, if you want to give a quick overview, and then we can have a time period of discussion about the information that you sent them previously on that recommendation.
Okay. So do you want me to go through the PowerPoint, or do they already have it and we just?
I already sent it, but why don't you go ahead and go through it once again, please?
Okay. I'll try to share it here. The luck we had with that last
Maybe
one.
that's not the right thing. We've given our luck with PowerPoint.
Let me see if I can do it here. Can you see my presentation? I'm guessing no.
Not yet.
No, we see your email.
Not yet.
See in my email. Okay.
And I got a fireworks presentation. I don't think I got a dog presentation.
It's on the back end of that. So it starts off fireworks and then it goes to the dog stuff.
Okay.
Is it showing up now?
Yeah, now we are. We got the
Can I see
fireworks. It's fireworks, yes.
Yep, I'll jump down to the animal control part here and blow this up. Oops. That's not what I wanted it to do. How about that? Is that good enough?
Yes.
That work?
Yep. That works. Yep.
Okay. All right. So basically, this is just our current ordinance about animals running at large. Again, I put it in there just so you knew what the current ordinance was. It's pretty simple and straightforward. The big thing with animal control is it's at large if it's not at heel, right? So it's got to be on a leash, it's got to be on the premises of the owner, or it's got to be at a veterinary hospital or whatever, or it's got to be at heel, and that's where we get into this discussion about that. And it has to be obedient. When it's at heel, it has to be obedient to the commands of the owner or the responsible person. So that's our current ordinance. And then it talks about the other section of our ordinance also talks about when it's on your own property. So if it leaves the property, then it's obviously at large. So those are just a quick, I won't go through and read everything about it. Here's where we compare to everybody else. So ordinance similar to Urbandale that allowed the at-heel exception. You got Ankeny, Clive, Johnston, West Des Moines, Waukee, Grimes. Ordinances that do not appear to allow the at-heel exception, at least not that I found when I read through them, are Windsor Heights, Altoona, Des Moines, and Pleasant Hill. So they basically require a leash. So it's a mixed bag. I'd say there's more out there, obviously, that have the ordinance almost identical to ours. Our neighboring cities, when we were with West Pet, we had all of our ordinance kind of in line. So when we put West Pet together, all the ordinances were kind of put together the same way. So the animal control officers knew how to enforce and didn't have to have different rules for each city. So that may have been part of it, how we came up with the same stuff as West Des Moines and Clive, but there's others out there too that have very similar language. So it really becomes a matter of what do you want to do? When we talked about this before, there was the discussion about requiring a leash at all times. And I believe it was brought up by Councilmember Olbrich about what about the people that go to these larger parks of ours and let their dogs run to fetch a ball, to fetch a frisbee, to do those types of things. Some of them mess around with, working their dogs, hunting and finding things like that where they're off the leash. So that was a concern that he had voiced at that time. And I kind of get that. I will tell you that we don't have a ton of complaints. The complaints that we do get about animals at large or not on a leash really are in violation of our current ordinance because they're not at heel either. So what they're describing when people call in and complain is a violation of our current ordinance. The dog's going into other people's yards. It's approaching their dog when they're meeting them, and it's not being obedient to the owner's commands. Those are all violations of our current ordinance. So as far as complaints go, it's not like we're telling them, hey, we can't help you because, you know, it doesn't have to be leashed. That's not what we tell them. We tell them that if it's not at heel and under the obedience of the owner, then it is in violation of our ordinance. Now, the big question is, we got to catch them doing it, right? So either that or we got to have the victim or the person reporting be the witness, you know, before we could cite somebody. And honestly, we don't usually cite the first time. We usually try to give a warning. If we get the repeat offender, that's where we would issue a citation, you know, if that happens. We just don't have a lot of that. And honestly, I can't remember the last time we cited anybody. We've had some incidents where we've had some dogs that have bit people, and those are handled much differently than all of this. And obviously, those dogs that have bit someone are also in violation if they're, you know, weren't on a leash or came out of their yard and did that. That is also a violation of our ordinance because they would be considered at large. I came up with a little bit of language based on this. I came up with last fall after the discussion and with Councilmember Holbrook's comments. So I added this little piece in here about no other animals or persons are within 100 feet. That would kind of allow a person to go to a park, and if nobody else is around, they would be able to throw the ball, throw the frisbee, those types of things. I just came up with that on my own, trying to solve that problem that he was talking about. I don't see this in anybody else's ordinance. It does offer a few challenges, you know, how far is 100 feet? You know, we're going to have officers out there trying to gauge what 100 feet is. I get that. It's just a number I came up with on my own. There was no, like I said, there was no other ordinance out there that really pointed me to the 100 feet exception. I just thought it sounded reasonable to me. So I put that in there just as a something for you guys to look at. And then I also added this little piece to our animal control section here, where we're talking about having control of your animal and remains under direct control of the owner or person of competent to restrain and control the animal. So I just added a little bit of language to our current ordinance to make it a little more clear. Doesn't really change that section of it that much. It just made it a little more clear. So that's the animal stuff. I can answer any questions you have or offer any other insights that you have, you know, that you want, and then we'll go from there.
Hi, it's Bridget. I missed, I think this Lunch and Learn where we talked about this before, but I have a lot of feelings about this. In my advancing age, I've become a dog person, and we have the goodest dog in all of Urbandale, but she is, you know, a mutt. As with most mutts, she has, you know, pity in her, and, you know, she looks kind of like a pity. And we've spent a small fortune to train her, and I still would never, ever trust her off leash, just walking down the street. And you never know what bunny or ground squirrel or whatever is going to spook a dog. And I get frustrated every time I see someone, you know, they're done with their run or whatever, and they take the leash off, because I just think you're setting the dog up for failure when you do that. Even, you know, with small kids and small dogs and cats, and I just think we're setting dogs up for failure when we allow the off-leash exceptions. I guess I understand where Adam was coming, and I don't really have a problem with that, with people, you know, playing with their dogs in, you know, a large open space off leash, but in a neighborhood setting, I think, I mean, there's dogs in our neighborhood that are on electric fences that people will cross the street. My daughter just said, that they'll cross the street because they don't trust the dog on the electric fence. So I guess I would like us to see us change the ordinance to take away the heel command, or because I just you just can't trust any dog, in my opinion, as much as I love dogs and absolutely adore our shelter dog, but there's just no way you can know what's going to trigger an animal or the other animal that you're crossing paths with, or a kid. And so I feel very strongly that we should change the language. So I apologize for missing the previous meeting, but that's my 2 cents on this. I don't know if there's a way to, and I think we could roll this out with, you know, now we're finally offering our dog park where you can, we welcome you to have your dogs off leash. We have, you know, and also maybe list some of the other surrounding dog parks in Waukee, West Des Moines, and encourage people who want to be off leash with their dogs to go there. That'd be my 2 cents.
I would add to that. I mean, we had an incident not that long ago where someone reached out to me in regards to Lakeview Park, and an individual who gets defensive and accosting to residents when he is asked to put his dog on a leash. I reached out to that same individual to get her thoughts, and she said, this morning I counted 6 dogs and no leashes at Lakeview Park. So, I mean, I think, or Lakeview Pond, I think, you know, when we don't have leashes, you know, you run the risk. Yes, I've had dogs that have been very well trained, that they would come, they would heel, they would, you know, I could go take Frisbee, do whatever. But the reality is, if you demonstrate that with one dog, people are seeing that, they're going to model that, and you have no idea of what type of training that dog has had, or the individuals to understand how do you train a dog to get to that point. I do think the timing is good because of the dog park, and I hate to set our officers up to have to try and enforce something. You know, who determines obedient? Who determines if the animal is under control? Who begins to determine that 100 feet distance? I think we set ourselves up by having the option, having that language in there. I think we make it as cut and dry as we can, to keep it clean, to keep enforcement easier. I mean, granted, you're still going to have to catch the situation, but I mean, at least then it's very clear cut. You need to have your animal on a leash. End of story. I would not want to be put in that position to have to make that judgment call of whether or not a dog's obedient or not, or trained appropriately.
Well, I know for me personally, I've been an advocate for requiring leashes since I was first put into council. And this stems from issues that we've had in my own neighborhood. We've had dogs that were not leashed, and under the current ordinance, they wouldn't have been fined or even really reprimanded in any way. And it escalated into a dog biting my neighbor, and supposedly other dog bites, but this is the one that ultimately led to this individual's dog being classified as a vicious dog. But I feel like if we had a leash law in place, it may have prevented it from occurring in the first place. Not a mind reader, or I can't predict the future, so I can't tell you for sure that would have happened. But I would like to think that if we had something in place, hopefully it could prevent things like that from occurring in the future. I do agree with Adam's point about having recreation with your dogs, and I know I've owned labs in the past, and they're very active dogs. They like to run. They need a lot of exercise, and in a park where you can throw the ball, 100 yards down and allow the dog to run back and forth, I completely agree that is something that you should be able to do. And I would almost see if we could have rather than doing it the way that Chief Johansson did it currently with what's shown on screen, if we could almost do the reverse and require leashes, except when having the dog participate in recreational activities. I think that's the compromise I would be more willing to go towards. But as an owner of 2 small dogs, I always keep them on a leash. Well, the new one now, but I always keep them on a leash when we take them for a walk. I'm always fearful of what other people's dogs are going to do, because as much as I would love to say that I can corral them as quickly as possible, it's a 10-foot leash. So trying to get them back is not always easy when you have a freestanding dog charging at them.
So, Chief, my question is, if the dog is not at heel, if the dog is not on a leash and it was at heel, but suddenly surges at somebody, or that is a misdemeanor then, because then that dog is not at heel at that point, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It violates our ordinance. Again, these types of nuisance things are a problem with people, because they don't want to testify in court. They don't want to, you know what I mean? So they'll call us, but then they want to be crime alert. They don't want their neighbor mad at them. They don't want this person. They don't know what this person's capable of. Like the person up at the Lakeview Park is very confrontational when asked about a leash. So they don't want to be the person that has to go down to the courthouse and testify if we write a ticket. So then it becomes the officer having to try to witness this, to be, so we don't have to involve them, and I can be the witness. If I drive up there, I get a call, a dog off that's not obedient at heel and is off the leash, then I go up and observe that, then I can write the ticket, and I don't need anybody else to testify to that later when that ticket gets challenged. So that's where it becomes a little bit of an issue always, is catching them doing it. So yeah, I've told AJ this before, and I don't have a dog in this fight, so I literally don't have a dog in this fight. It will make it much easier for the officers to enforce if they're off the leash, and it's a strict leash law. So it doesn't matter to me what we do. I can tell you that we don't get a ton of complaints, like I said, and usually when we address them, it takes care of it. But yeah, I can go walk. I'm sure I could walk down the bike path and see some dogs off the leash. I see them out my window, occasionally, not causing any problems, but I see them off the leash and running around the park down here. So yeah, I can change this to whatever. I will add that Councilmember Blake had sent an email and said something about making a requirement where if there's a large gathering or a public gathering like the parade, where he was then it required that you have a leash. That was kind of his option on the take on the whole thing as well. So, but yeah, it's now one thing it doesn't address is the invisible fence thing. This has nothing to do with that. So if somebody has an invisible fence in their yard, they're still going to be, not in violation. They would be good if the dog stays in their yard. Now, if the dog crosses that invisible fence and runs across the street because there's someone walking their dog, now their dog is at large and they're in violation. So this doesn't address, you wouldn't have to, I guess if we change this, at least according to what I'm hearing, you would not have to leash your dog in your front yard if you had an invisible fence. You could still do the invisible fence option, the way we're looking at it right now. But yeah, I can offer anything as you want as far as opinion, but like I said, we don't get a ton of complaints. I see both sides of this. The safest way is to go leash everything, but again, we don't have a ton of issues.
Well, and as I read this, even if there's a dog in somebody's yard, even if there isn't an invisible fence and they're under control, then there's no issue. I mean, it's private property, right?
Yes, correct. That is correct. If the dog does not leave your yard, it could be in your front yard, and as long as it doesn't leave that yard, it's not at large. It's on your property. Yep.
I mean, I'd be in favor of putting in a stricter leash law. And if that's, I mean, it's just leashed, I don't care if it's 10 feet or 6 feet or however long.
Is there any appetite to have an exception for dogs and recreational activities?
I think you set yourself up because walking is a recreational activity. I mean, you start to just kind of open and expand, and we have a dog park. I mean, I get people want to do, I get it. Like, I used to love taking my dog and going and, you know, letting her run, and I was always amazed because she came right back and sat down at my feet. And, you know, but at the same time, like, we were very intentional about where we took her to do that. And we have a dog park now, so let's refer people to the dog park.
And then I wouldn't be opposed to you having just a flat out leash whenever they're off their own property. I mean, like I said, that was what I originally pushed for, and I know Adam was adamant for something to encompass dogs performing some sort of recreation, like frisbee fetching, ball fetching, whatever. But for me personally, I'd be 100% okay if it was just a strict leash law.
I mean, I think if we roll this out in conjunction with the dog park, I mean, I think people are still going to do it. And, you know, I don't, you know, honestly, I don't care. You know, the likelihood of somebody playing, you know, catch with their dog in somewhere in the Walnut Creek Park and getting caught is probably slim to none. So, you know, people are going to do this even if we, you know, have the law. People are still going to have their dogs off leash even if we have the law. But I think it now is the time to do this. And we can educate people along with promoting the dog part. I mean, I am, you know, 25 years ago, I was not a dog person. I have been beaten down to become a dog person, and I just want all the dogs to succeed and be able to live their best life. And I think you, by having people have their dogs off leash, you are tempting fate with all of our dogs, and that is not good.
Here's my suggestion.
Is this your new puppy?
Yeah, how could you ever say no to this face?
My suggestion would be that we take a moment on this, and I would like to actually present this as a discussion item at the Metro Advisory Council. Only because, as the chief has pointed out, if we can go back to the jurisdictions again, Chief, you have to show that screen again. You know, again, I think the goal is always to have fairly consistent ordinances across the metro area, and right now we do seem to be similar to the majority of the ordinances. I acknowledge that there are some that are different, but I think it would be worth having at least a discussion to maybe have everybody look at this and, you know, have a larger discussion, and if it warrants maybe some other jurisdictions saying and weighing in on why they do certain things and don't do certain things. I think that'd be a helpful discussion to have, and then we can come back and maybe draft maybe a model ordinance for the region, which we have done before. That's the purpose of MAC, is to do some things like that, and I think this is a perfect example of doing something like that. So,
what's the time frame on that, Bob?
Well, you know, again, I don't know if we can get it on. We may be able to get it on for the July meeting. I'll talk to Mayor Edwards, or actually Tom Cope, Councilman Cope from Johnston. I can talk to Tom, who's our chair right now, and see if we can put this on our July agenda for a discussion item.
I guess I disagree with you. You are the mayor, but I think now is the time to move on this as we roll out the dog park and are doing education around the dog park.
When
But
does
I
the-
will defer to other folks on that.
When does the dog park come online?
I think the park staff is still working on their presentation. I think we're looking at the end of the summer. We're still working to get the turf established. I think that was reported last time. There was a question at a council meeting that we have to get the turf established before we allow dogs, because once we open it up and the dogs get in there, then the turf goes downhill. So we've sodded some of it and we're out there watering it. This week is not going to be a good week for us, but we're working hard. So we're looking toward the end of summer now to get it fully established and open the facility up.
AJ, this
So
is
it
Scott.
seems like
That is
maybe-
correct on that timing, probably.
All right, thanks, Scott.
It seems to me like there might be some room to take this to MAC, have that conversation, and then align a change with the rollout of the dog park. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, if we are gonna make a change in the ordinance, so that does take time too to publish it and have several readings on it as well, so. But I think it warrants a conversation, that's what it's there for. We've had other animal-related discussions on vicious animals and things like that among the metro, and that we've done that on a consistent basis, so.
And I would just like to really quickly add, Johnston does have a ordinance requiring a 6-foot leash when not in their yard.
Yeah, I thought so. But I
And I
wasn't
think West Des Moines has, even though they have the same law that we do, their parks staff has the discretion to ban dogs without a leash in all parks, all city parks and rec buildings. But I can't find it right now.
I looked at the Johnston ordinance because City Manager Johnson had told me that you wanted an ordinance similar to the Johnston one, and I think that is in their parks. They require the leash, but I think there was an at-heel exception other places. So I could go back and look at it again, and I've got confused because I looked at so many of them, Councilmember McBurney, but I think they do allow the at-heel, but not in like public areas. So there's another option, right? So if you're in a public park or a public area, it has to be leashed, but if you're not, like walking down the sidewalk, then they were allowing the at-heel. I think that's what Johnston was doing, but again, I'd have to go back and look at it. So, because I looked at that one specifically because you'd said something about it to AJ. So, but
Yeah, I think it's in.
there's a lot of there's other options out there for sure.
Yeah, I think it's in chapter 60 or 56 of their ordinance, but I could be reading it wrong. But yeah, sorry, got us sidetracked.
Are we ready to move on? Are we gonna? Is that a decision then to go to MAC with it? I can bring forward whatever you guys want. Whenever you want. So, we can move to fireworks, or we want to keep talking this one.
Well,
I think we have a path.
I think it's worth doing. Let's have a discussion there.
So as I understand, you'll take this to MAC as soon as you can, have a discussion, and then we'll have something for your decision at the end of summer to coordinate with the opening of the dog park. Is that what I heard?
Bridget, if you're trying to mention something, you're on mute.
No, I'm talking to my daughter.
Okay.
Yes, AJ, that is correct.
Okay. Rob, good?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Just, keep me posted, and like I said, I can bring forward whatever you guys want, and then changes if there are any that come out of that. So.
And I would just add, I know several of you have received comments and concerns from neighbors and friends about dogs-related issues in the park. Councilmember Kroll, you mentioned Lakeview Park, and we did make some change. We did issue a citation there. But just as a reminder, you can tell people that the officer has to see something that's in violation. And if they wish to come forward and work with the officer in the department and they issue the ticket and be a witness, we certainly will facilitate that. We'll need their cooperation, but it's one of those things where, you know, officers need to be there, and if they can't see it, then they need their help.
I would just clarify that that incident at Lakeview Park, we went to the gentleman's house and spoke to him about the issues because he was not very friendly when told about the leash requirements if they weren't at heel. He stated he wasn't going to go there and walk his dog anymore. He's going to go to Moffett Lake or something like that. But he was not issued a citation. But we just gave him a warning. Gave him a warning saying, hey, if this continues, we're going to cite you. And that was his response, that he was going to go somewhere else. So.
All right, I misunderstood, Rob. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Nope.
All right, I know Parks is ready with their presentation, but I think at this point, let's go to the fireworks discussion while we have the chief here and talking about enforcement, and we'll get through that and then go back to the first
Okay,
item.
just a quick rundown here. Try to make this as quick. I don't know that it will be, but we'll give it a shot here. So the current state law, just put a few of the points in here. You got to be 18 or older to purchase. It's allowed June 1st to July 8th, December 10th to January 3rd. Hours, they even establish hours, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. They give an exception to 11 p.m. on July 4th. They give an exception to 12:30 a.m. on December 31st, obviously, so you can get through the dropping of the ball, I guess, or whatever. And then the city and counties can restrict or prohibit, and the fine of not less than $250. That's what the state code says. So if you look at our calls for service, this is our calls for service from July 1st to July 5th for the last several years. See, we had a kind of a little bit of a jump up there, the COVID year when everybody was bottled up at home and letting off some steam, I guess. I had a little map here where it shows our calls, where the location of those calls were from July 1st to July 5th. Just to give you just a little bit of a visual on where they're at. And then also just July 4th. And the vast majority of those complaints, so if you look at that map, that's July 1st through 5th. About a little over 2/3 of those calls are coming on the actual July 4th date. So if you counted them up, I can't remember the exact number, but it's pushing up almost to 3/4 of the calls are on July 4th. I gave another little comparison similar to the dog ordinance of what other cities are doing. Some are banning, as you can see. Altoona and some others are banning. Several are permitting on specific dates and times. There's several that are doing that as well. So there's a mixed bag, just very similar to the dog ordinance. So it's a mixed bag out there of what other suburbs are doing, or cities, I should say, not just suburbs. And here is a comparison of enforcement from our neighboring agencies from last year. So this is 2002. You can see the number of calls, and this went from June 30 to July 5th. You can see the number of calls, and then you can see the number of citations that were issued. So we're not enforcing in Urbandale, or we haven't been strictly enforcing in Urbandale, and nobody else has been strictly enforcing either in any of the other metro police departments. So we're kind of all falling into that same mode, if you will. I'm moving through this kind of quick, so just holler if you want me to go back to something. Here's just highlight a few things that I wanted to express to you today. It is very difficult to enforce. You must observe the person lighting, as possession is no longer illegal. Back in the day, before the state, made it legal, if we just caught you with them, we had you, and then we could seize them too. So now, with it being legal, when we catch you lighting them off in the city when you're not supposed to be, we can't even take your fireworks because they're legal for you to possess. Now, there are some exceptions to that. If we get you 2-3 times still lighting them off, we're probably going to seize them. But if we seize them initially, we will have to return them, and that will be a major headache for us if we try to to do that if we're having to return fireworks at a later date and stuff. I really don't think we have the legally that we can seize them when they're on initial violation. Our manpower during July 4th activities, obviously, we've talked about that a little bit already. It's difficult to have the personnel to do the fireworks enforcement and do all of our other activities. I will tell you that we had to. I posted the special enforcement fireworks details for July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. We've had them posted for the last 2.5 weeks because we have schedules that have to come out today for next month. That's just by the way we do our work rules and things here. And no one has signed up for any of them. We had a difficult time filling our overtime assignments for the parade, the carnival, the beer garden and things up in Lions Park. I had to do an all call to everybody, basically telling them that if we don't get, volunteers up here to do some of this overtime, we're going to have to rework everybody's schedule completely. And I don't know what we're going to do. We've never had to do that here. So they did step up and sign up for all of those assignments that we had posted for the July 4th activities, but they did not sign up for the overtime assignments for the enforcement. Again, just what does the community want? Several metro communities allow at specific dates and times. The volume seems to indicate to me, at least, that the activity is wanted by a large majority of the residents. Based on the information that I've seen from the other police agencies, no other community is actively enforcing. But bottom line is, we'll do what you guys tell us to do. So if you want us to go out and actively enforce, I will try to make that happen. I don't know that it's going to make a huge difference in how many fireworks are lit off in the city and how many complaints we get, but that's definitely an option that we can go out there and see what we can do with it. I just wanted you to have the information on what others are doing and kind of where we stand as far as manpower. That's all I really have.
Rob, the numbers that you pulled, if you go back a couple slides, the reports, where are those coming from? Keep going, like the location.
Oh, the maps or?
Yeah, well, I guess any of the data, where is that actually being pulled from?
These calls? Like
sure, that or the map or any of it.
Yeah, that's from our CAD, from our computer aided dispatch. So our record system here at the police department.
So that's coming directly from Urbandale. Is that including Westcom?
Well, Westcom's our dispatch center, so they are the ones that trip these calls, if you will. But that's our records, so we just get in there and run, okay, in Urbandale, how many calls did we have during this date to this date, and we can pull all that data. So that all is coming from the same system that runs Westcom. It's a Central Square is the company that manages that. We run our records system out of Central Square as well. So our police records system and the CAD system that runs Westcom are all Central Square. So we can just get in there. Our office personnel can get in there and put in fireworks calls and pull that data for whatever date and time you want.
Okay, so is there any way to record, because I'm looking at the map, knowing, that there is, I'm looking at these saying, I know on July 4th, there was 4 of us calling in at one location, and it's showing up as one ping. So I'm wondering if that data doesn't capture the number of calls related to a specific incident, or if it captures the number of people involved at a specific incident.
I wouldn't drill down to those type of details. Now, if you have an incident, let's say you have an automobile accident at 86 and Douglas, and 10 people call on that, it's one incident. It doesn't track the 10 people that called in, and we will get 10 calls on something like that. So yeah, if you have 10 calls, or let's say 4 calls at very much the same time. Now, if they're an hour apart, that's going to be a separate incident. But if they're all coming in at the same time, like you just had, like I said, like the accident type situation, if you had 4 people call in at the same time, they would lump those under one. It's kind of a dispatcher,
Short case.
judgment call, if you will, whether that's the same incident or it's separated. If you get some time in between them, then you're going to get separate incidents probably.
So depending on what that length of time is, I mean, we may actually not be getting a clear representation of how many people are affected and or frustrated by just looking at this data.
Well, yeah, there's no way to tell who's frustrated with it or affected by it unless they're calling us.
Well, I mean, even if they're calling in at the same time or roughly the same time, we may not actually be capturing that then.
I would say you're not missing a lot of calls if they're calling in, unless they're calling in within 2 or 3 minutes of each other. That's going to be captured as a separate incident. But again, if you get all of a sudden a neighbor in a certain area is lighting off a whole bunch of fireworks, and you get 3 or 4 calls right at that same time, that would be one incident. You're correct. But I don't think that's happening a ton. And if you compare our data to the other cities, let me pull that one back up again. Our numbers are right in line with everybody else's as far as the number of calls based kind of on the size of the city. If you look at it, like West Des Moines was 105 calls, Urbandale was 83. Just based on the size of the city, I'd say that's probably pretty reasonable. If you go down through there, look at that Ankeny, another pretty good sized suburb, 114 calls, just a hair bigger than West Des Moines. So I think the numbers are pretty accurate as far as who's calling in.
Yeah, Ankeny also allows it on the 4th though too. So
they do. Yes,
those would be for numbers outside of the 4th. So.
Yeah, this is a complaint. Well, correct, Mayor, but if you're lighting them somewhere you shouldn't be, even though it's during the hours, let's say you're lighting them and they're dropping on the neighbor's house, or you know what I mean, and you're not doing the due care or whatever their ordinance says that they have to do. So yes.
Yeah. So Chief, I appreciate, the information. I appreciate the difficulty on this thing, and again, I think everybody agrees that the legislature has put us in this position of allowing the sale and allowing the free distribution and allowing the possession of these, but then the use is regulated by the cities and counties. And I understand the difficulty and what that makes for your staff, but by the same token, they're still illegal in Urbandale for use. And I've spoken to Mayor County this morning. I spoke to Mayor Trimble on this as well, as far as where they are, because they're cities that are in similar situations that we are, and their messages, and I guess what my message or my thought would be is, I don't think we want to ask you to be the fireworks police as far as going out on special patrols to just solely deal with fireworks. But by the same token, if we have large complaints and if people are really abusing this and we have evidence of it, then I think we need to be enforcing our current ordinance to the extent we can, which includes giving citations, which I think will have a deterrent effect in the future. I understand you're not going to catch everybody. I understand you can't cite somebody unless you actually see them do that. But there are instances where I think our officers have seen or would have the opportunity to write up a citation. And in my mind, I think that should happen yet.
Yeah, I don't, and I'm not disputing that at all, Mayor. I guarantee you there's been officers. I think Councilmember Kroll had an example from last year where one of our officers was in a park and they were lighting them off on the other end of the park, and the officer didn't even go over there. So yeah, I can see that as well, and I can address that. And we can definitely do the best we can with it. And I don't think we're going to have the numbers to put out any special patrols, but can definitely get the ones that are out there to not be, turning their back to it or whatever, or just allowing it to occur either. So,
and I think we should maybe put out some messaging ahead of that. I don't know how we do that, either through Derek, through the city generally. I'd be happy to film something to put out on social media ahead of the 4th that, as a reminder that this is still illegal. And, we are where we are. I don't know if we're going to have more than one tent. AJ, do you know if we had more than, I know we have one tent already up at the old Kmart on Hickman, the storage facility.
We have the, one tenant, as you said, Mr. Mayor, it's gone up on the old Kmart facility. I drove by it yesterday. I'm not aware of any other, I don't know if Steve is still on the meeting. I know
Yeah,
that.
I am here, and as of this morning, it's just that one tent so far.
All right, thank you, Steve. So I had a situation where I had to be out of town this weekend, came down Highway 41 out of Granger, and I counted, I think, 6 or 7 in along Highway 141 in Grimes. And I know that there is they usually pop up along Hickman and Clive. And then there's a very large one in Waukee at the Hy-Vee there. So they're coming around. I mean, this is the season. So they're starting to go where people, even if I saw some of the cities, Windsor Heights bans fireworks, but they have a permanent facility across from the ice arena. So the irony there sometimes isn't lost on me that we don't allow you to shoot them here, but you can sell them out of here. But yeah, right now we're just the one, Mr. Mayor.
And I did speak to the attorney for the owner of that property, and they at least told me that they didn't realize, it was not a state owner. They didn't realize the state of our ordinances and our laws, and so they had already signed the lease for that tent and could not get out of it by contract. But they did assure me that they would look at that in the future, and I take them at their word. I asked them to be good corporate citizens and to look at that they don't do that. And that's what I've prevailed upon Hy-Vee and some other landowners, Merle Hay Mall last year, and they haven't come back to renew that. So I applaud them for not asking to lease to folks in our city again. So if we have one tent, then so be it. That's there, and I've done what I can to prevent any more. But Chief, I guess I would push back a little bit on your comment. The majority of people like these as well, because the council and I can assure you that we get volumes of emails from folks that have PTSD and have animals that are scared to death of these things, and abuses of, in my own neighborhood, I had somebody shooting off a Roman candle, and the ashes were landing on my roof. Frankly, I could have been hit by it if I hadn't been careful where I was standing. So it's a difficult thing. I don't think they are appropriate in an urban environment, but that's where we are. And I think, again, I'm monopolizing the time here, but I'll let the council members speak. But I have strong feelings about this, and everybody knows that. So.
Well, I have extra super strong feelings as well, Bob. I have already every member of my household plus my dog been awoken on Sunday evening at 11:11 p.m. I will show you the video that was taken 20 yards probably from my bedroom window of a significant fireworks display. I called Westcom. At that moment, I couldn't get the address. I had the street. But these people will continue to set off fireworks, and we continue to get emails, and we continue to get frustrated constituents. And I don't think we can just continue to do normal. I mean, we talked about this last year after the 4th. We're talking about it now before the 4th. I think we have to do something different. And I don't know what that is, but it has to be. I feel very strongly that we have to come out strong on this. Yeah, I mean, our hands are tied, 90% of the way by the state. But I would love to see Bob do a video with, the first dog of Urbandale. We could get some other dogs in with the video. Maybe some babies. We got some of those on the council. But like Sunday night, I mean, if I would have when I call Westcom, if I would have given them the address, unless there was a police officer, driving down Meredith, they weren't going to see it. But it was a 5-minute long display. But if I would have given them the address, could they have gone and knocked on the door and said, stop? you know, we're not gonna give you a ticket, but you have received a complaint.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what we do when we get these, but a lot of times we don't have the specific address. I could go back through them all and figure that out, but sometimes they get the specific address, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we gotta try to see where, you know, try to figure out where they're coming from and try to narrow it down and try to get there, but absolutely, if we get an address, we're going to the door, knocking on the door.
Even if you're not seeing it,
Yes,
even if it's 11:30 at
they
night.
should be. They should be, yes, absolutely. Yep,
I mean,
just like
I
any other noise
am
any other noise
beyond
sorry.
frustrated with in anticipation of how the next 3 weeks are going to go down. And I feel very strongly that we need to ask your people to do more. And I know they have their hands full and they don't want to do more, but I think
I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that our officers are chomping at the bit to enforce fireworks ordinances, because they're not. And that's my problem that I have to deal with, is to get them convinced that this is important and we gotta take enforcement on these things. It is difficult for them when they see them being sold, and everybody, the flack that they get when they do go there, but we'll do our best and try to get them out there and like I said, write tickets. And if they see someone writing them or lighting them off, we'll write citations, and $250 tickets. We'll catch some attention, and it'll catch when we're gonna get it on this end for sure. I know we will, and I know that's in the officers' minds a little bit as well. You know, we try to build up that goodwill with the community, but that doesn't mean we also let the community do whatever they want either. So. Well, we're used to that a little bit. We got thick skin. We'll work our way through that and try to get some compliance. I don't know that every situation we go to and we see someone lighting off fireworks deserves a $250 ticket, but
it's $600, isn't it?
Well, if you use the state code, it's $250. If we write $600 tickets, is up to the judge if we write it under that ordinance. We can write state code and do $250, or we can write the city ordinance, have them go down to court, and then the judge sets the fine.
I mean, I'm more concerned about the roof of my house with these fireworks going off 20 yards from my house and my neighbor's house than somebody going 40 on Meredith.
Right.
So,
Chief, would it help if we provided you or had a chance to talk with officers about the complaints that we get via email? I mean, we certainly get them. We get phone calls, and you know, sometimes it's easier to see the logic behind enforcement if you see how it's directly impacting other people. And that's a hard spot to put you in as well, because they're listening to you, but at the same time, you know, you're one step removed. And I get.
No, I think, yeah, I don't know that that's necessary. I will, what I will do is I will go out, I will meet with all the roll calls myself personally and tell them what the issues are and what we need to do going forward for this season. And hopefully we'll see the officers do that. The problem I have is I can't guarantee you that that's going to happen, but I'm going to give it my best shot, because I'm not riding with those officers every day, so I don't know what they're seeing out there, you know what I mean? But I will get them convinced that this is a worthy adventure that we're going to go down, and that these things need to happen to try to get our hands around this a little bit. But yep. I will reiterate that we could probably write 50 tickets this season, and it won't. I don't know that the complaints are going to do that. But if we hit this back when this was illegal in the state, we did a really good job of keeping Urbandale from lighting them off. We had that zero tolerance, and I'm not going to lie, it's gotten away from us. We cannot keep up with the volume and I mean, it just isn't Urbandale. I've been in Grimes where it looks like World War III after the 4th of July night. There's smoke. I agree with everything that you guys are saying personally. From an enforcement it's a very difficult prospect when these things are being sold on every street corner and the volume of it that's going on. And then in my presentation, when I said that there appears to be a lot of people that want it, because just if you figured out everybody in town that's lighting them off is a yes vote, that's where I was coming with that. Now, I understand 100% about the dogs, the PTSD, the waking people up in the middle of the night. I 100% agree with all of those comments. I'm just telling you, there is a lot of people in the community that you're not hearing from that want these things because they're obviously lighting them off. So that's where I was coming from with that. But we'll do our darndest to get this thing turned around and try to do some enforcement.
I mean, I think if you issue a few $600 tickets, word will spread pretty quickly. Even if they aren't enforced, it's a pain in their butt to have to go down and fight it. And sometimes just being an annoying factor helps get behaviors under control.
Chief, I appreciate everything you're saying, everything your officers are saying too. I know you have to balance community policing and build that trust with our residents as well. But again, the issue lies where the legislature has placed us, and essentially, this is with all due respect, they're getting their end result is that they're trying to force the hand as far as essentially make these legal in every city in the state of Iowa, even though they aren't. They don't want to take the ownership. I'll just say it. They don't want to take ownership of saying they are legal, but they're forcing the hand on this thing. So we realize the realities of it, and I know this. We just count on you for you and your officers to make the best judgment call at every time. That's all, and we know you do that.
Right. I think and I will research this a little further, but at least initially, I think the city ordinance is up to a $600 fine. I think the judge can set that, and so I think what's happened in the past when we wrote that is the judge is setting a fine of about $100. So I think we're probably better off going with the state where it's $250 minimum, and we're gonna get them more that way, I believe. But I'll double check on that. But I tell you right now that, at least from my perspective, $600 fine for lighting off fireworks, that's pretty steep. And I'm telling you right now, there's going to be a bunch of kids that are lighting them off. So,
sure.
Yeah,
that happens.
Okay.
I mean,
all right.
You know, I deal with kids who drink underage, and guess what? They get fined, and then their parents get involved, and behavior gets paid more attention to when it comes down to the wallet.
Chief, every year I tell our legislators the real, because I'll just end it here, but I always get a few emails where they copy some of our legislators on us, and frankly, our legislators throw our law enforcement under the bus for not enforcing the laws, which is not fair either, because of exactly what you've presented here. And I always push back and say you've created this untenable situation because enforcement at this point is practically impossible. So again, thanks for all you do. Thanks for what your officers do. I know you are I truly appreciate you're in an untenable position, but let's do what we can, I guess, is our.
We will.
So.
I promise you, we'll do more than we did last year and see if we can get things turned around a little bit and go from there.
And I'm happy again if you want to talk to Derek about some social media posts or whatever, I'm happy to participate in that as well. So.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll get with Derek after this session and we'll work out something.
All right. Thank you on that. We are running short on time. I know, Jan, can folks stay on for a little bit? I don't know how long your presentation is going to be, Jan, but let's get back to that then.
Scott's got the microphone.
Yep, is my screen up? I pressed share, but.
We can see your desktop.
What?
There's a lot of desktop there.
Yeah.
That's still Rob's screen. Rob, you need to unshare or stop sharing up at the top.
Trying to figure out how to do that. There we go.
Okay. There we go. All right.
Talk fast, Jan.
Yep, so I'm going to take over for just a couple minutes and then Jan will come back up through. She covered a little bit. I really just want to talk first about what we're proposing to put in the building. or as an option, right, for council to consider as part of the CIP process. And as Jan said, we could take it down or we could reuse the space. And the space is needed. You know, all of our recreation programs are full this summer. We'll run into that this fall. There's a growing need for what we're doing. And we're limited by our space. And we're trying to make things happen in spaces that probably aren't necessarily the best place for them, just size-wise. And we could be more efficient and better in different spaces. So in sharing, again, 3 components of this. Why is that not clicking? I know it's slow. The multipurpose room, the gym, and when I say gym, that's a small G, not a big G. It's a small area, but would be a hard court space. And then the outside area, which we're calling the yard, just for a reference point. So just for understanding, the gym space would be the area just kind of off this office. This is the photo of the current location, right? It's an old shop. It's got sloped floors for drainage. It's garage doored, unfinished walls. That's the space that we're looking at. But we could convert that into usable space that would have a hardwood floor to do basketball clinics, to do volleyball clinics, taekwondo, large dance classes. Those sort of things could be offered in there, in that location. We could also fit a pickleball court in there for use. So those are all be things that we could utilize this space for. Cost for just the gym area alone is just over $1 million to renovate this space. We do have Chris from ISG is online with us, and Matt from Confluence was online, but he might have stepped off. That's who we worked with on some of these costs and some of the design stuff. So, and again, that's just the space alone. That doesn't include some of the other, there'll be costs for restrooms and some of that kind of stuff too, which we'll share in a second here. The second space would be the multipurpose room. You can see that would be just to the west of where the office is going to sit. And again, this is the photo of that space. We used it's the old park shop itself. And it is, again, unfinished room, unfinished space that we would have to come back in. It would need HVAC, heating. We'd have to, obviously, the floors. We'd probably add some room, add some wall space. All of that would have to happen in this space. But what could we do there? This would be a rental space for sure, but we'd also offer a lot of classes in there, whether it's yoga, Tai Chi. We could look into, our senior center classes are very full, always looking for space there to offer some senior classes, especially during the day. Youth camps, parent-child classes are very popular right now. All of those things would be something that we're really limited on what we can offer for our residents and our users. So, and then also mentioning that, we do partner with the library on a lot of activities, and the synergy from having the 2 buildings close together would be a nice addition. And then cost for this is about the same. There's probably a little more construction involved with this one, but just a little over $1 million as far as for construction costs for this piece. And then the outside piece, it's our old bullpen where we stored all of our park equipment. We're calling it the yard, and it's this space right in here. These little things off to the side, just within the design, they'd be some canopies, shade for outside use. For events that might be happening here, to have some shade in there. There's no real trees tucked up into the yard itself. So what could we do in the yard? We could have all kinds of programming out there, kids' activities. This would be an artificial turf activity area, so we would not have to worry about weather. But then to be able to add in our concerts, movies in the park, all of those things could happen right here at this location. Cost for construction of the yard, again, artificial turf. So we're about $700,000, and included in that would be a outside entry point. The 2 others would come in the current entry point to the building. We would have to build one kind of between the library parking lot and what is the Memorial Tree Park to add an access point to get there. But again, these are large community events, yoga in the park. This is obviously a large bags tournament. This is a place that you could do movies in the park and be set up a lot easier to draw those people in these larger community events. I will share that this probably needs to follow the other 2, just as far as for construction, because as far as for getting in and out of the building for construction, this would have to be really the last part of this project. So what would this cost? The indoor gym space and the multipurpose ring, put them together, we're at about 2 million, but you do have to include the cost for the restrooms. We have just a little bit of modifications to the current parking lot that's over there, and build a little sidewalk as part of that. So almost $700,000 there. And then the yard itself would be, again, right at $700,000. So the revitalizing this space is $3.5 million. This would be the cost. I can share that a future option might be to include a splash pad in this area. This area right here in the center would be the splash pad. This could be a large one for sure, probably maybe even larger than Lions, because we do have ample parking in the area, but we would have to construct some outside restrooms with this. And you wouldn't want people running in and out of the building in wet swimsuits, so we'd have to add some restrooms into this as well too. And then there is space for future amenities as well, area to the south of the building, family-friendly activities, mini golf would be one. But again, both of these two parts are further down the road as far as for what we're talking about. Here's kind of a summation of some of the cost. If you combine all of the indoor stuff with the yard as well as the splash pad, and then some additional parking that would be required, likely, we're at about $6 million, and those are in today's dollar costs. So, and I think it's just important to mention that we're really trying to tie all of this together, right? This location is perfect for this because of everything else that goes on here, whether it's City Hall itself, the library, Giovanetti just across the bridge. We have all the public art, Miracle on 86th Street at the Memorial Tree Park. Again, those are great activities kind of year round. And then we're already on a bus stop, which is a nice addition as well too. So I'm going to turn it over to Jan for real quick for some funding.
And yes, I just want to quickly, thank you, Scott. I just want to quickly mention, I know the question comes up in regards to what type of potential sponsorships, naming, grants, things like that. What Scott just proposed, obviously, we are working right now on the CIP, so what some of the things that staff is going to be proposing. So this is some of the forecasts for what's going to be coming. And some of the grants, like Land Water Conservation Grant, that is for more of the outdoor amenities. We'd anticipate like Mid-American or maybe MetroNet or other potential opportunities, or legacy grant through Prairie Meadows. Anticipate the more appealing options is once you get to the outdoor amenities. So we certainly would be looking at those. But again, we just wanted to present to you. We've been working with ISG and Confluence to get this information together to be able to share that with you. And again, as we know, the UPLEX didn't pass. That doesn't eliminate our deficiency in rec programming space and our growing needs with the community. So certainly happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Jan, I think this is fantastic, and all of the spaces I think we desperately need, but I think you know where my question is headed. I guess I would like to see, like, from your mind, and this is obviously something that's going to take a little bit of time, like how we would lay out, you know, we have Lions Park master plan, you know, that we're starting on with the splash pad. We have this great project, and we need to figure out a great project that we can afford for Walnut Creek Regional Park. And I guess I'd like to see like a timeline of the different phases of this project, the different phases of the Lions Park, and like when we would do, you know, a splash pad or a regional playground at Walnut Creek Regional Park, because I think we need to make sure that, and I don't deny that all of these are necessary, but I want to make sure that we're you know, getting programming everywhere that we need it.
Absolutely, and that's what I had mentioned as we're going forward with the CIP, we're going to be doing just that. If you recall, I know I've received some questions from residents living out west, is now that the UPLEX didn't pass, when are amenities coming? If you recall in the CIP, we have the regional playground that we are actually getting RFP ready to go out for next year for next to the large open shelter in the regional park. But yes, we certainly realize that there is certainly cost to any of these improvements within parks, within streets, bridges, everything. So we will be bringing this forward with staff's recommendation in the CIP. And realize those are, you just hit the nail on the head. Those are three of our biggest areas that we're going to be looking at. And hopefully we just need to win the lottery or something, or find some, maybe we'll grow money on trees or something within the parks. But yes, we are excited about all three of them, and we'll be forecasting our recommendation in the CIP.
Well, I guess, I mean, if there's a way we can have something like outside of the CIP, I don't necessarily need all the dollars and cents. I mean, I just want to know kind of the timeline that you're thinking of when everything's going to fit together. You know, can we do, I mean, I know it needs to go in the CIP, but I sometimes think the CIP is hard for the average person to really get a timeline picture out of. That's one thing. And then the other thing I wanted to say is I think that we need to do some sort of fundraising on the front end of this project here. What are we calling it? The rec?
The rec hub.
Rec hub. I mean, because it's such an incredibly unique opportunity for us to take advantage of this space, and I don't want to. I'm not indicating that I'm not fully supportive of this, but I think I want to see us actively pursuing grants on the front end of this project.
That certainly is our intent, to do some grants and so forth. And it's kind of the catch-22 is knowing the timing is going to be important when you submit grants. So yes, that will be part of this whole process. I know that Nikki and AJ are probably flinching when saying what's the timeline for these projects. That a lot of that obviously is tied to the CIP of what other priorities within the city. I can tell you that I want all of them within the next 3 years, but that's not going to fall within the funding. So timeline will be tough, but we certainly can share the list of what is proposed, and then with everything within the city and capital projects, it depends on funding.
The other thing, Jan, is on the rec hub, as far as some of the things, I want to make sure we are very intentional about what we place where too. I'm a little concerned about maybe the splash pads that are adjacent to the Memorial Garden, if that's going to create the right adjacent environment, because you know the Memorial Park and Gardens are a little more a place to have more quiet time than to have a splash pad right there. Are we going to have some conflicts there, you think, or not?
Well, through our master planning, we haven't, that hasn't been a discussion or concern, but Scott, you have some.
Go to that splash pad slide. And that's a great point, Mr. Mayor. You can see that Confluence did create somewhat of a barrier there to protect those two a little bit. And again, this isn't a final design, you know, where we put that in location might change, but there is a barrier in there to help kind of seclude that area a little bit and give it that buffer. Again, not 100%, you know, but again, we had large equipment coming in and out of here on a regular basis as well too. So, and again, we create that space in between a little bit. So that was thought about a little bit.
No, I appreciate that. And I know we have obviously limited space there, and you have to work with what we have, but I just want to make sure we are thoughtful about what use each piece of our public space is trying to accomplish. So that's all. So I have heard that comment from a number of folks on you know, so if I know there's probably a way to do it, and we can be thoughtful about it, but I just want to make sure that's top of mind.
And I would just echo that. I've heard some of the same inquiries and concerns from folks about encroaching on that memorial garden, because that is something that folks do utilize for its intended purpose right now. And when they saw the initial plans, they had some concerns about that. So just being mindful.
Okay. Any further comments or questions on that from anybody? Hearing none. All right. Well, thanks for the presentation on that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Scott. We are at the end of our agenda. AJ, do you have anything further to add at this point?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor. Like I said, I see Derek is online. I'll check with him after the meeting today, and we'll work out a program for a more robust public information segment on the fireworks and truly educating our residents about that. It is in fact illegal to shoot them off in the city. Again, can't hurt. We'll do our best to do as active outreach as we can.
All right. Great. Thank you. With that, we are at the end of our agenda, and so I will.
Mayor, just real quick, sorry, I missed for the fireworks portion. I just wanted to add in very quickly that from a person who is a veteran who works closely with our local VFW and has heard complaints about the fireworks associated with PTSD, and knowing that with my own PTSD and what kind of problems that can cause, Chief Johansson, I just do want to thank you for taking it into consideration and working with your officers to try to make this a little bit higher of a priority, and just enforcing the value behind having the ban of the fireworks. So since my iPad dropped me from connection last time.
I will do, Councilmember McBurney. I'll make sure, like I said, I'm going to meet with all of them in person at the roll calls and express my thoughts on this and your guys' thoughts as well, and see if we can turn things around as far as what the city citizens of our city are doing with fireworks. We'll do our best.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a very good remainder of your day, and we stand adjourned.